So, how are we going to do this?
Well, I guess we need an intro.
Yes.
I've got a pad and a piece of paper, so I shall write some notes. But in the meantime, we've still got my
Your ramshackle kazoo intro. I quite liked it, actually. I thought that was quite neat. It was very, very us.
Factoraly. Welcome to
Factoraly.
My name's Bruce Fielding.
And my name's Simon Wells.
And we are nerds, and well, specifically fact nerds.
We are indeed.
We get our buzz out of like winning pub quizzes.
Yeah.
I actually had a conversation with somebody on the canal the other day, and they said, Bruce, where's Aruba? And I went, okay, so Aruba is one of the ABC islands at the south end of the Caribbean. It's very close to Venezuela. It's very popular with Americans, and lots of cruise ships stop there. And I said, right. I've been Wikipedia. Thank you very much.
We are both that annoying person who sits in a pub and just, apropos of nothing, goes, "Did you know?" Yada, yada, yada.
or worse, someone who goes, "Actually, I think you'll find."
I think you'll find, yes. We should have T-shirts printed up with, "I think you'll find." It's actually Latin.
So every week we're going to talk about something and find some useful, interesting facts about whatever it is that's the subject of the week.
Yep, some of it will be themed, some of it will be tied around what's going on in the world at the time, events, occasions, seasons perhaps. Other times it will just be random, useless, "Hey Bruce, let's have a chat about X," whatever X might be.
I think that X is going to be definitely the factor that makes this more interesting.
The X factor.
Absolutely. Well, yes, we both trained under him, so we can't really get away from it. Welcome. You know, I can't do a Peter Dixon voice.
I can sort of do a Peter Dixon. Live from London.
It's pretty good.
Thank you so much. So our astute listeners may have observed that we have a thing about voices, don't we? We're interested in vocal stuff.
We are.
And that is because we're both professional voiceover artists.
That's right. I am one of those people whose voice you never hear it. You used to hear back in the 50s and 60s, and you don't really hear anymore.
You're not old enough for that to be true, surely.
No, I know. But even though I'm not, the voice is. I was trained in the 60s, darling.
Oh, marvellous, marvellous. I was trained much more recently than that, so yes, the chances of having heard my voice in the 60s are negligible.
Actually, thinking about it, my voice would have been heard just about in the 60s, late 60s, early 70s. I was on a holiday in Luxembourg, and my mum and her then husband were sort of doing the touristy things in Luxembourg, and it was one evening I couldn't really sleep, and I just thought, do you know, I'm going to go for a walk. I was quite young. And I just started walking around Luxembourg, and I came across this building that said on the outside, Radio Luxembourg.
Nice. And
I thought, I'll just ring the doorbell. So I rang the doorbell, and this person answered, and they said, how can I help you? I said, I'm an English tourist. I'm here. I just thought as I was in Luxembourg, I'd come and visit Radio Luxembourg because I listen to it all the time at home. You know, it fades in and out, and it's a brilliant radio station. I love the music. And I said, would you like to come and meet one of the DJs? And I went, sure.
Yes.
So there was this, I went up into a recording studio area. And when a record was on, they showed me into where the DJ was playing the records. And this guy said, "Hello, I'm Kid Jensen. How do you do?" And I said, "Hello, I'm Bruce Fielding." And he said, "I understand you're a tourist." And I went, Yeah, I'm just here on holidays. Would you like to be on the radio? So I said, sure.
Oh, my goodness.
So I had a quick chat to Kid Jensen on Radio Luxembourg.
Good grief.
So my voice will have been heard over the airways many, many years ago, but actually not until more recently than that have I actually decided to do this for a living.
Excellent. So I started much more recently than you. I've been doing this for just coming up to 3 years now. After a long and illustrious career as a postman beforehand, it's not the most natural divergence, but there you go. So yes, that's us. We do voices. We sit behind microphones and we do voices all day long, talking to ourselves in a little padded booth.
That's exactly how I describe what we do.
And now we're doing exactly the same thing, but we're actually talking to each other about random facts. And we hope that some of you, at least one of you, will be listening and enjoying the random facts about which we speak.
Yes. It's probably my cousin Gary.
Hello, Gary. Welcome to the show, Gary. Welcome, dear listener.
When we say welcome, dear listener, we really mean
yes, singular. So, Bruce, what is the topic of conversation which we have chosen for this week's show?
So we decided at random to pick a thing, and the thing that we decided to pick at random was a cucumber.
Indeed.
And I didn't think there'd be, honestly, that much to know or say about cucumbers. I was quite surprised at how much.
I thought this research will be over in seconds. Days later, there's actually quite a lot to know about cucumbers, isn't there?
Yes, I mean, we'll be going through the various properties of a cucumber and how cucumbers have been used over the years. Okay, so tell me from your research, where did cucumbers come from?
So cucumbers originally were discovered around 4,000 odd years ago, somewhere between the Bay of Bengal and the Himalayan mountains. And they have been used by all different sorts of societies over the years. They were used by the ancient Romans. They've been used throughout Europe, Asia, America, everywhere pretty much now has some form of cucumber or other in its diet. The cucumber grows, I found out so many interesting things. I always thought that cucumber plants grew up vertically and cucumbers hung off them. That's just the way that us humans have, worked them out. That's just the way we cultivate them and the way we grow them for maximum efficiency. But naturally, the cucumber plant grows horizontally on the ground. It's kind of a tendrily creeping plant, and the cucumbers come out of all of these little tendrils and grow horizontally along the ground.
So a bit like a strawberry, really.
If I knew how a strawberry grew, I could agree with that. Is that how strawberries grow?
It is. Strawberries grow along the ground and on bushes and tendrils, which is interesting because cucumbers are actually a fruit.
Yes, they are.
They're related to the melon. So you could actually mix a fruit salad with tomatoes and cucumber. Yes. I wonder at what point does it become a salad?
There's a great phrase I heard a while back that says, intelligence is knowing that a tomato is a fruit. Wisdom is knowing that you shouldn't put it in a fruit salad.
Exactly.
So I think the same applies for cucumbers. And you mentioned there the cucumber family. So the cucumber is part of the cucurbits family, which includes cucumbers, courgettes, squash, marrow, watermelon, and cucumbers.
So all those other things are also fruits.
Yeah. What's the technical definition of a fruit over a vegetable, Bruce?
I don't actually know.
Okay.
I think it's got something to do with seeds and a fleshy coating. So technically anything with seeds in the middle and a fleshy coating, like a tomato or a cucumber or a melon, is or even things like oranges.
Yes, apples.
Seeds in the middle, fleshy coating. Yeah. They've all got that. But I mean, it's a lot easier, I think, to spot fruit from vegetables as it is to spot nuts from
legumes and
legumes and things that aren't nuts. Oh,
yeah,
droops, I think. Is it droops?
I've heard that. Yeah, I just heard that term recently for the first time. Droops. What are you eating? Just some droops. Good for you.
But they're I mean, like a bit like nuts and fruits. They're very good for you. Cucumbers. I mean, they're full of vitamins and minerals, and I mean, they're good for allergies. Apparently, they reduce facial swelling, and importantly, if you suffer with halitosis, they're quite useful to reduce bad breath.
Really?
Apparently.
How do you go about applying them?
I think you just stick a whole cucumber in your mouth, which means you have to breathe through your nose.
Which is why you suddenly have good breath, because you're not breathing on anyone.
Exactly.
Perfect.
They've got folic acid and vitamin C and potassium and all sorts of good stuff in it.
Yeah. And also the properties of a cucumber. You've sort of mentioned the different vitamins and minerals and things that are in it. The phytochemicals, whatever a phytochemical is, in cucumbers, it kills certain types of bacteria, and the watery content of the cucumber, they're about 95% water. And this is why people go around putting slices of cucumber on their eyes, and the cooling properties of that helps your skin, which is apparently where the phrase cool as a cucumber comes from, because they are genuinely quite cool items and have properties to cool the blood and to cool the human body. That's where that phrase comes from.
That hadn't actually occurred to me, but you're quite right. I know that they're good for sunburn. If you overdo it on the first day, to get lots of slices, or actually to like a pulp up a cucumber and stick cucumber pulp on the red bits.
Right.
It does actually ease the sunburn.
And speaking of overdoing it on the first day, cucumbers have enough vitamin B and electrolytes in them to help with having overdone it slightly in the alcoholic sense. Eating a few slices of cucumber at the end of a session can help you to wake up with less of a headache.
Is that just to do with the water content, do you think, or is that actually to do with the stuff that's inside?
I think it's the stuff that's inside. So the vitamins, electrolytes, when you've had a bit of a session, you may not know. We may be a group of complete teetotalers here, but there's a particular supplement you could take at the end of a heavy night, and the electrolytes in that replenish what was lost in your system from drinking too much alcohol. And those same elements exist in the cucumber.
Yeah. There's all sorts of useful things that you can do with the cucumber. One of the most fascinating things I found interesting is that you can actually erase ink.
Okay.
If you rub cucumber skin over biro, you can actually rub the ink off the paper with the cucumber skin.
That's brilliant. So you've had a really late session, you're a little bit hungover, you're sunburnt, and you've written something on your head in biro.
Or your friends have.
Your friends have, quite probably, yeah. The cure for all of those in one is a cucumber.
Yep. I'd say
Great.
so.
So there we go. We're now going to see an influx of people heading to the pub armed with cucumbers just in case.
So where do cucumbers come from these days? Do you know?
Well, it depends on where you are in the world as to where you get your cucumbers from. The number one producer of cucumbers in the world today is China. China produces almost 73 million tons. Not 73 million cucumbers, 73 million tons of cucumbers every year.
How many cucumbers are there in a ton?
Oh, I wouldn't like to guess.
More than 5.
Oh, definitely more than 5. Put a couple of zeros behind that, I should think.
Yeah, I would think so. That's a lot of cucumbers.
It's a lot of cucumbers. And they are way ahead of any other producers. The next biggest producer is Turkey, and they produce only 2 million tons. So 73 million tons is way out in the lead.
Gosh.
The UK is number 47 in the list of international cucumber producers. We produce a meager 58,000 tons of cucumbers each year here in the UK.
Wow, that still sounds like quite a lot for our population, unless there are lots of people into crudité.
Do you know which part of the UK produces the most cucumbers?
I would imagine it would have to be somewhere down south because the weather, but I don't know. And probably not Kent, so probably west because Kent's very dry. I imagine you need a lot of water for cucumbers. Okay,
that was a lot more analytics than I put into it. I just asked Google. Apparently it's in the Lee Valley, and the Lee Valley sort of borders Hertfordshire, London, a few other places. And the Lee Valley is known as the cucumber capital of Britain.
By whom is it known as the cucumber capital of Britain?
Probably the people who work in the Lee Valley. I've certainly never called it that. I found out some information about these people in the Lee Valley who grow cucumbers, and they're part of a consortium called the Lee Valley Growers Association, which consists of about 80 individual growers in this area, covering 450 acres of greenhouses. and they employ about 2,500 workers every year to cultivate the cucumbers that are grown in this
Wow.
area. Isn't that a lot?
Yeah.
I was surprised by that. And they've been going for quite some time, happily producing the bulk of this country's cucumbers, due to various economic pressures that we're all feeling the pinch of a little bit at the moment. They're having to cut back, so about a fifth of those growers are currently considering selling off their cucumber growing land for property development.
Will they be building buildings that look like the Gherkin?
Oh, I do hope so.
If you don't know, by the way, the Gherkin is a building in London that looks a bit like a Gherkin.
Yes, it does. Sort of.
Sort of, not really. I do know that a guy called David Thomas, who lived in the UK, he might even have lived in what was it, Cucumber?
The cucumber capital.
The cucumber capital.
Or London's salad bowl, as some others call it.
Well, David Thomas may well have lived there. He actually grew the world's heaviest cucumber,
Really?
which weighed in at, believe it or not, 12.9 kilos.
Goodness me.
That's 23 pounds. That's 23 and a half pounds practically.
That's a heck of a cucumber, isn't it?
It is one heck of a cucumber. And he displayed it in 2015 at the Malvern Autumn Show in Worcestershire.
Wow.
He also, by the way, this chap also holds the record for the heaviest parsnip.
Okay. What was the weight of his cucumber again?
It was 12.9 kilos.
Wow.
23 pounds.
So I've found a Guinness World Record for the biggest cucumber ever grown, but it's not as heavy. This was a gentleman called Sebastian Suski from Southampton. Only last year, he grew a cucumber that was 3 foot 8 inches long.
Wow.
Which for the young uns out there is 1.12 meters. But it wasn't as heavy. It was only 7.5 kilos.
Well,
but
that's
still,
weird. Yeah.
Imagine looking at a 3.5 foot cucumber. My word.
Imagine trying to bake a roll that's long enough to actually slice it sideways.
Yeah, sadly, it didn't mention the girth.
No.
But I would imagine quite chunky.
Absolutely. I don't imagine very tasty, though. So I think all of these things that are grown for visual effect generally don't tend to be the tastiest of them.
Yeah, it might be a bit too watery.
Of course, the most famous sandwich is the cucumber sandwich.
Yes.
And it has to be white bread.
Naturally.
It has to be a lot of slathered in butter, I would say.
Yeah.
And the butter has to be at the sort of temperature where it's not quite tearing the white bread up, but
it's actually
very
spreadable.
nearly. It's just barely spreadable.
Yes.
And of course, the big thing about cucumber sandwiches is you have to cut them into triangles.
Naturally.
And you have to take the crusts off. It's really important to take the crusts off because the crusts detract from the flavour of the cucumber and also the texture of the cucumber. Plus, as we all know, crusts from bread give you curly hair.
Now, I disagree with the crusts off thing. I feel like I'm getting 5% less of a sandwich if someone's cut my crusts off and thrown them away. So I would keep the crusts myself.
You would?
Yeah. Also gives you something to hold on to slightly compared to just the little tiny triangle of bread. It's a bit squidgy. It's a bit delicate.
Yes, exactly. It's a dainty dish. It's meant to be dainty. You're supposed to hold it with your little finger in the air as you pop each corner into your mouth.
Gosh, that's so English, isn't it?
It's also very important to salt a cucumber sandwich.
Really,
because
is it?
Cucumbers, unless you're using very salty butter, because you do need that salt to bring out the flavour of the vegetables. I don't know if you cook spinach, but if you cook spinach with butter, the butter activates all of the goodness in the spinach.
Oh, really?
And it's a similar thing with cucumber sandwiches. The butter activates the goodness in the cucumber.
Right.
There are about 50 different kinds of cucumbers.
Are there really?
A lot of them are made into pickles.
Right.
And pickling is about 4,500 years old. And there's a story that Saladin the great Muslim conqueror and hero of the Crusades, depending on which side you were on, he credited pickles for his vigor and health.
Wow.
The history of pickles is quite interesting. I don't know if you found out much about pickles.
At the moment, my brain is trying to make a joke about salad with pickles. I can't quite get it. If anyone can think of a decent joke about pickles and salad that incorporates the word salad in, please leave it in the comments. Thank you.
Absolutely. Well, I mean, one of the most famous pickle salesmen was a guy called Amerigo Vespucci.
Right.
Who discovered America.
Right. That guy.
Yeah, that guy, Amerigo Vespucci. I mean, Christopher Columbus originally went looking for India, but Vespucci was a pickle salesman who would provide pickled goods, including vegetables and meats, to sailors at ports around Europe.
That's fantastic. And he just accidentally stumbled across America whilst he was out selling his pickles.
Yes, looking to expand the market for pickles.
And now, ironically, I think I read about 60% of Americans will pick their pickles out of a particularly well-known brand of hamburger.
Yes, there was actually some research conducted at Oxford University by Professor Charles Spence.
Okay.
And he discovered that I think it's 51. This might have been the UK, but I think it's a general sort of global thing, which is burger lovers actually choose to remove pickles from their burgers. The main reason cited for this was the taste of the pickles, which is 23, about the quarter of them, the texture, about 16%, and one which was, I've never tried them, but I don't like the idea of pickles.
That's a valid reason, I guess.
I think so.
So how about you, Bruce? Are you leave the pickles in or take the pickles out?
Oh, I'm definitely a leave the pickles in. I was reading about this research, and they were saying that actually there are good culinary reasons why you should leave the pickle in, because it the vinegarness of sort of like counteracts the fat in the burger. So you've got the acid versus the alkali thing happening. You've also got the crunch of a pickle versus the sort of the
squidge.
The squidge of a burger. So it adds texture. So it adds flavor, texture, and offsets that fatty taste in your mouth. So technically, there's actually a very good reason why you should leave the pickle in your burger.
Now, gherkins. Let's talk about gherkins. Gherkins aren't actually a thing, are they? I was always under the assumption that a gherkin or a dill or whatever you want to call it was a vegetable or a fruit as we now know in its own right. But it's not, is it? They are just pickled small cucumbers, aren't they?
Yeah, as I said, I think there are an awful lot of there are 50 different kinds of cucumber. So
that's crazy.
The salad cucumber, that's right, the big one with the knobbly bit on the end, is quite different from a gherkin or a cornichon sort of type of cucumber, which is also different to the dill pickle, that kind of burger pickle. They're all different, and there are some which are lower in water content. The pickled ones generally tend to be the ones that are lower in water content, because if you try and pickle a salad cucumber, it just goes all mushy and horrible. I know, because I've tried.
Have you really? Talk us through that process. How did that work?
I had some pickling vinegar and some gherkins, and I thought, well, I've run out of gherkins. I've still got lots of pickling vinegar left. Let's try it with a cucumber. It didn't work.
Okay. Is there just too much water content in a cucumber?
I think that's probably the reason why.
Right.
I love a wally with my fish and chips.
A what now?
A wally? I don't know what you call them elsewhere in the UK, but basically a pickled gherkin with your fish and chips. You can have mushy peas, you can have gravy, you can have pickled gherkin.
Slice of bread and butter.
Exactly.
And a wally.
And a wally.
Is that a regional term?
I don't know. I've always called them wallies.
Have you?
I imagine that it is.
Now that's interesting, because I used to work with a chap who was determined that they were called Wallies, and we went around looking this up one day, and it's quite a northern term, so people around sort of the Midlands up in this country at least refer to them as Wallies. But I've now officially met more people from the south who call them Wallies than people from the north who call them Wallies. So maybe that dialect is shifting from one end of the country to the other.
That's possible, I guess. I actually like them so much that I saw on Amazon that there was a small tin of pickled cucumbers available to be delivered to my home. So I thought I would order this small tin. It turned out to be a tin about the size of a small dustbin.
Okay.
The suggestions from my friends were basically to go to some ward in a hospital full of pregnant women and just give them away for free. Because apparently it's one of those things that pregnant women crave.
Oh, I see. I was trying to work out what the connection there was. So pregnant women crave
pickled gherkins, yeah. So I understand.
I wonder if there's some kind of innate property that is good for a growing baby.
Well, I think there's a thing, isn't there, where sort of mothers instinctively know what the fetus needs most of, and sort of things like eating coal, things like that were one of the more famous ones.
Yes.
I was just thinking, we were talking about Saladin earlier. There were lots of other famous people who liked pickles,
such as
Alexander the Great.
Okay.
Apparently, he made gherkins part of his troops' rations.
Right.
Cleopatra reckoned that pickles were one of the secrets of her beauty.
Ah.
And Caesar and Bonaparte, they seem to think that, I mean, much like Saladin, they seem to think that pickled gherkins gave their soldiers strength. And I think Bonaparte offered a reward of 12,000 francs, which is a lot of money, to anyone who could help improve the storage of pickles.
Okay.
So he obviously thought quite a lot about pickles.
That's fantastic. Maybe all the troops just ate a load of pickled gherkins and then sort of went into battle and breathed really hard at the enemy, and they just collapsed.
Or possibly they just threw gherkins at the enemy. The enemy went, "What the hell?" In 2013, in the Sri Chinmoy Center in New York, somebody called Ashrita Furman managed to cut 27 cucumbers using a sword with his mouth.
What?
So basically, I had a sword in his mouth and just cut 27 cucumbers with a sword held in his mouth.
I think I'd be happier doing that than holding the cucumber in my mouth and have someone cut it with a sword.
I know somebody who's chainsawed apples out of her mouth.
Really?
Yes. Well, she had somebody with a chainsaw and she was holding the apples in her mouth while this chap was chainsawing them out of her mouth. Yeah.
Well, it's good to have a hobby, I suppose.
I suppose. It's lockdown. What else are you going to do?
Now, we've had a bit of a cucumber crisis here in the UK recently. Have you observed this?
I have. There's all sorts of fruit and veg that we're not getting at the moment.
Now, as far as I understand it, we get quite a lot in this country. We get quite a lot of our salad vegetables from both Spain and Portugal, including cucumbers, tomatoes, peppers, lettuces, that sort of thing. And of late, there's been a bit of a drought problem in those two areas, which has sort of stunted the production of those items. So if you go into any supermarket in the UK over the last couple of months, we've really struggled to get hold of cucumbers and tomatoes and that sort of thing, which then begs the question, how many of those products are we getting from Spain and Portugal when we have these Lee Valley growers right on our doorstep?
Tons and tons. Yes, exactly. Unless they're exporting theirs to somewhere else.
It could be. Kind of a bit like the fish market, isn't it?
Yeah.
We're an island that's absolutely surrounded by ocean and fish, but we sell all of our fish to other countries, and we get most of our fish from other countries.
Global economies.
Global economies.
Did you know that drinking pickle juice can help relieve a cramp 37% faster than drinking water?
No, I didn't.
So if you have a leg cramp, you're laying in bed and suddenly you go, all the cords in your legs start to go. Just have by the side of the bed, apart from your glass of water, have a glass of pickle juice.
When you say pickle juice, do you mean like a jar of pickled gherkins without the gherkins?
Yes.
So it's the vinegar, it's the juice of the cucumbers themselves, and all the other stuff that goes into it.
And all the salt and all the other bits and pieces.
Wow. That's fascinating. I wonder if the relief of not having cramp anymore is offset by the heartburn having just guzzled a whole load of pickle juice.
Or the reaction of the person that's beside you in bed going, what the hell are you think you're doing?
Fantastic. I might have to try that.
Have we exhausted the
I think so. I think I am out of cucumber-related trivia.
I do have one more, which is in 2014. The German authorities found a drug. I mean, Germans are obviously very big on pickles. And they found a drug haul worth about $56.5 million, about 50 million euros, like drugs smuggled inside pickled cucumber jars on their way to Iran from Germany. So basically, they were smuggling drugs in pickle jars.
Is that sort of to mask the smell? Because they used to smuggle drugs in coffee grounds, didn't they, to put the dogs off the scent?
Yeah, well, I think that pickled cucumbers would definitely put dogs. I'm not sure whether there was actually pickled cucumbers in the jars as well as the drugs, but there were definitely drugs in pickle jars.
Yeah, no, I think that might have a detrimental effect on the quality of the drug, mightn't it? If it's actually sitting in a jar of brine.
Well, this has been fun.
It's been great. I've enjoyed that. Let's hope that our listener has also enjoyed it.
All right, Gary.
Hey, Gary. Please do send us any comments, any suggestions, any advice, any topics you'd like us to waffle on about.
Yes, please. That's always a good thing. We thought that cucumbers would be extremely dull.
Yeah.
So if you can think of something incredibly dull, and we'll try and find some interesting and useful facts about it.
Well, there you go then. You have been listening to Factoraly with Bruce Fielding
and Simon Wells. Thank you very much for listening. Don't forget to do all those things you're supposed to do with podcasts.
Yes, clicking, liking, subscribing, sharing.
All those things.
All of those things.
And we'll be back next week with another dull item that we'll find something interesting to say about.
Excellent. Looking forward to that then. Okay.
Thanks very much.
Thanks for listening. Bye-bye.
Bye now.